John Bucyk, how are you?
Not too bad, Mike. I feel pretty good.
Got
I got a
away.
new hip.
They're saving it for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I hope I get it soon.
Right. Hey, there are a couple of things. I'll start. Harry was on with us earlier this week, and he spoke about how when he was hired to coach, one of the things he needed to do was to spread out the leadership, and how that was a difficult thing for you to lose, the captaincy, but how well you handled it. What do you remember about that?
Well, just we had, I was the captain. We had a couple of assistant captains, and he thought it would be a lot easier if we just went with all assistant captains. But I was number one. Somebody else was number two. Somebody else number three. So to me, it was the same, but that wasn't important. The important thing was try to get together so that we could win games.
Take our next question from Dan Roach. Dan, go ahead.
Hey, Chief, how you doing?
Not too bad, Dan.
Two questions. Oh, good, thank you. Two questions for you. One, could you were the man that took the cup, started skating with the cup. What that meant to you, and did you realize what it meant to the organization, to the city, and everything that goes with it? And also, Bobby Orr tells a story of his first camp in Boston. He got his key and came in, and you were sitting there in your underwear when he walked in. Do you remember that? Could you recall that story and then talk about skating with the cup?
Well, skating with the cup was a big thrill. And I did it then, and I did it in New York, and I think it was the last time that the individual captain would take the cup and skate around with it. And now they do it as a group. But I was honored and very happy to be able to do that. The cup weighs 35 pounds. At that moment, it probably weighed like 5 pounds. It was a great, great thrill, and I was honored to do it. And then, when Bobby walked in, it was quite a thing. This young kid walking in, and there I am. And he automatically, right off the bat, being very polite, it was Mr. Bucyk. And I said, no, you stop right there. It's not Mr. Bucyk, it's John or it's Chief. And that's it. And he said, okay. So that was it. And that's where our friendship began.
Thanks, Chief.
No problem. Sorry, we don't have the video. I guess what I need is a new iPad, Brandon.
Thanks, Chief. We'll take our next question from Evan Marinovsky. Evan, go ahead.
John, thank you for doing this. I hope you're doing well. With this current Bruins team, do you sort of see your game or yourself in any of these current Bruins today?
Well, there's a few of them, yeah. The team was playing so well. That's what's so disappointing with everything that's happening. We had a good opportunity to win the Stanley Cup again, and that's what it's all about. But unfortunately, we may not get through this season. We don't know. We just have to wait and see what happens.
Thanks, Chief.
The thing is, with our team back in the 70s, we had three lines that could score goals. And then we probably had the best penalty killing unit in the league at that time with Derek and Eddie Westfall. And we have the same thing now with Marchand and Bergeron. You needed to kill a penalty, they would do it, and they'd also score goals. That reminded me so much of Eddie Westfall and Derek.
Take our next question from Fluto. Fluto, go ahead.
Hi, Chief. Nice to talk to you. I was wondering about, by 1969, 1970, you had been around for a while and been through some tough years with the Bruins. So how meaningful was it for you to win that year after having gone through some tough seasons before that?
Well, it was really great because we had 8 years where we never even made playoffs. And then to come back and see the team changing, you could see the wheel turning. with Bobby coming, of course, and Barrett coming, and then with the big trade with Esposito Hodge. That was so big to us. And you just felt that your team's going to improve, you're going to win the Cup, and we did. We won it 2 years before, but we should have won it back in 71 too, because I thought we had a better team in 71. But we did win it in 70, and that was really probably one of the highlights of my career, because it was the first time that we won it, and we won it in Boston for our fans who waited a long time. And back in those days, you couldn't get a ticket. The team was so strong. But a lot of good memories.
Take our next question from Mike Petraglia. Mike, go ahead.
Thanks, Travis. Chief, thanks for doing this. Hope you're staying safe. I asked Harry this the other day about ex-players moving up to the press box like Cam Neely and Don Sweeney. My question for you is, and I think you can relate with this, what is it about the city of Boston or the organization, the Bruins organization, that tends to draw former players into the organization and have them stay in the city for so long after their career?
Well, of course, after the career, you have to talk about the city that are so loyal and such great fans. I mean, it's been terrific. Our ownership has been very, very good to me. Here I am still working for them, 60 some odd years. And I'm just thrilled to be part of it. And I think Cam deserves a lot of it. He stood by me and asked me if I'd be the ambassador. No pressure, and it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing that, meeting people. So, what can you say? And the fans are so great here in Boston. They always have been. And the loyalty as a player, if you're loyal to them and you work for them, you could be here a long time, and that's a proven fact now. Cam's the president, Don Sweeney is a GM, and here I am still with him. And I think that's the key, is loyalty.
And you're still loving what you do day after day?
Oh, I enjoy it. Yeah, I enjoy it. Except it's been tough this year because I have a hip that's gone. I guess, like the doctor said, I'm eventually going to pay the price for all the hip checks actually. And yeah. So, but once I get this hip replaced, hopefully I can get another year or so in.
Well, good luck, Chief. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Just a reminder for media, if you'd like to get in the queue to ask a question, please hit the raise hand button. And if you no longer have a question, you can put your hand back down. Also, just a note for Rich Thompson and Mick Colagio, I see your hands are up, but I think you have an older version of Zoom, so I'm unable to unmute you. But if you'd like to text me the question, I can ask Chief. With that, we will take our next question. Actually, Mick, I see that you were able to unmute yourself, so go ahead.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you, Chief. You were traded here for Terry Sawchuk, whom Jerry Cheevers and Ross Brooks did not hesitate to tell me one time when I asked them who's the best goalie you ever seen. They came out of their mouths at the same moment, and they didn't hesitate. And so that's a pretty big trade, and it's very young in your career. And I just never heard you talk about what it was like getting traded, and when Detroit was really a powerhouse of a hockey team, and having to start over again in Boston, and so much has happened that's been great since then. But how could you know at the time, right?
I didn't know, but I only played it in Detroit for 2 years. I didn't get much ice time. I only scored 11 goals in 2 years. So I was a little worried when I first came to Boston, but the thing that I was coming to Boston and I was going to play with Dick Stasiak and Bronco Horvat, who I played with back in Edmonton in the minors and in Detroit. So that made it really easy and comfortable. I had players that I played with before, and I just fitted right in and just got in. They put us together. Lynn Patrick and Bill Schmidt, they just put the three of us back together. And we played well as a youth line because of our Ukrainian descent. So then I didn't worry. After a couple of years, things just fell right for me. I had a great career as a player and really enjoyed Boston. I hate to leave. I had the opportunity. I was traded a couple of times, I guess, but those things happen. And I just here in Boston, when the World Hockey came in, I had a couple of chances to move on, but no, I didn't want to go. I leave Boston.
I always interpreted that as you getting the C back on your jersey when you re-signed after so many players had left. And I imagine that must have been gratifying for you, especially as the Bruins were coming in, bringing in a lot of young players at that time to replace the people who had left for the WHA.
Well, you know, those things happened, and a few players that left were able to fill in those spots, those void areas. And I was just happy to stay here. I didn't want to go. I had a chance to go to two different teams. And at that time of my life, I didn't want to leave. Start over. It would have been difficult. So I just stayed there.
If I could just sneak in one more here, and thanks for indulging me, to you and the Bruins. My sister hasn't watched 3 Bruins games. She was at a Monkees concert the night they won the Cup in Vancouver, but she knows Fred Stanfield, John Bucyk, Johnny McKenzie. She still knows that line. It came up one day and she recited them, and I was laughing because people don't understand how big the Bruins were. And the question I got is, you guys had a fabulous chemistry as a line and scored that big goal to win the Chicago series. And I just wondered if the Stasiak and Horvath, if that helped you figure out how to play as a line, and if that influenced how well you and Stanfield and McKenzie played together.
Yeah, you know what it was too. Like the 3 of us lived together in Arlington. We rented Pat Egan's home one year. We used to talk and sleep and eat hockey. After a game, we'd sit together at the house and discuss what we didn't do right or what we could do better and different things. So it did help. And then when I got to play with Pi and Freddie Stanfield, it was the same thing. We used to always talk about our mistakes and what we can do to improve it. And of course, a lot of pressure was taken off of us because the Phil Esposito and that line with Hodge and Cashman, they were our top line. They were the number 1 line. And, the other teams had too many of us to watch, and they couldn't. They spent their time checking the top line, and that left it open for us. And we talked about that, and we knew about different things and how to make different plays and different stuff. But, talking about things are always constructive. That's something we did. Even on the bench, if we made a mistake, we'd be yelling at each other. People would think we were fighting. But we were discussing it. We made our minds up that, anytime you could help by stating a fact and do it now so you'll remember what you did wrong. And that was something with our line. Little Pi and Freddie, we did the same thing. We talked about a lot of stuff, and we sat after a game and discussed those things.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Rich Thompson, I think I got you unmuted, so go ahead.
Thank you, John. Thanks for taking the time. I was looking at the stats, 81 power play goals that year. If I remember correctly, it was Orr and Stanfield at the points with you at the left post, Espo in the slot, and Hodge in the right corner. Just how did that power play become so effective?
Well, I think it was just that we moved the puck around pretty quick. We had positions to play. We thought of different ideas. And of course, when you get somebody like Bobby on the point and Freddie Stanfield who had a good shot, that made it so much easier. But I used to do a long pass across from the left corner to Bobby a lot and just give him the puck. And he had a shot that he kept down low. I don't think his shot half the time was over a foot high. And we thought that might be the key, is to keep the puck down low when you're shooting at the goaltender.
And just a quick follow, this current team has a very good power play. What do you think of how they use Pasternak in the slot and just the Bruins power play of this year?
Yeah, they worked very well. And they moved the puck around real good. You can't take Pasternak's shot away. I mean, he had a great shot. Marchand had a great shot. He's got a good release. And Bucyk, of course, in the corner, he does everything right.
Thank you, Chief.
Mike Loftus, go ahead.
Okay, I have 7. Um, no, actually, hey, John, I was going back over in 1970. The way the Eastern Conference was set up for playoffs. That all came down like to like the last day of the year, right? You guys were tied with Chicago, but they got the first seed. That Rangers Montreal thing was also a tie. Were you guys following that very closely as far as like who you might play? And back in those days, things with Montreal didn't usually go that well. Were did you feel fortunate that you ended up with the Rangers by any chance? Or
Well, yeah, you always watch what you're going to play. You want to know because that gives you a little time to study some of the players who you're going to be playing against. Fortunately, we ended up playing against St. Louis in the finals, and that was, they were just a new team, but a good team. And they had what I thought one of the best goalies ever in Glenn Hall, so we knew it would be difficult. But you just studied them. You talked about them. We always had team meetings where you would talk about and discuss different players. So, again, working together really helps us.
okay, and also Game 4. It probably gets a little bit overlooked, but that was a tight game, and you scored with 6 or 7 minutes left in regulation to force that into overtime. You remember much about that goal that day?
No, I just remember it was a very important goal because it tied the game and it gave us a chance to win the cup in Boston. If we'd have lost that, we'd have gone back to St. Louis, and who knows what would have happened. I mean, it's not over until it's over. We were up 3-0 in games, and if they would have won that game, that could have given them some extra energy, could have changed the game. But I was just glad I was able to score a goal that put it into overtime. And of course, we know the rest of it with Bobby, his goal flying through the air, and probably one of the greatest pitchers in sports hockey ever.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Chief. We'll take one final call for questions, too, to please raise your hand if you have any additional questions for Chief. Right now, the last one left in the queue is Dan Roach. So, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, Chief, just to follow that up, I've asked a couple of the guys that we've had on these conference calls, and just kind of when you see that picture, arguably the greatest in sports history or one of them, what immediately goes through your mind? Because we see it so many times over and over again over the years.
Well, you keep thinking, what a way to win. What a big goal. What a great player. And Bobby covered all of that. He's a great player. He got a great goal. We won the Stanley Cup in Boston. And that was kind of important to me because I wanted the fans to see us win it there and see what goes on with the post-game shows. And, I think of that very, very often. I was on the bench when he scored, so I saw every move. Saw Derek with the puck in the corner, saw Bobby moving. You visualize that all the time.
Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.